listen, when you have Deron Bland, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, you're not just losing your best players, you're losing premier players in all of the NFL. And now, all of a sudden, the injuries have started to creep in on the offensive side of the ball. They lose Dak for almost all of the fourth quarter. CeeDee Lamb, for all intents and purposes, they lost him for a good chunk of the fourth quarter, battling through that shoulder. So they've got to hope both those injuries are not long-term, because if they are, just as they get healthy and back on track on defense, it seems like now it just flips to the other side and you just play whack-a-mole all season.
Love is picked up, now rolling out for the first time, and he throws an interception. It's picked off all the way down, and scoring for the Lions, it's Joseph.
He can't quite get away, and you got to make good decisions with the ball, and this is certainly not one of them. And good defensive play. Joseph, another interception.
Kirby Joseph runs away with Jordan Love's very ill-advised throw, and the Detroit Lions run away from the Green Bay Packers. Tom Brady and Kevin Burkhardt getting a front row seat to one of the biggest wins of Week 9. Hey, everybody. Dave Hellman here. Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast, presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. Big win for the Detroit Lions up at Lambeau Field. A rainy, messy game at Lambeau Field. Dan Campbell beyond stoked with the way his team played in the conditions, the way his team is built for all weather. So much more to get into with that. The headliner from Fox's doubleheader is the Lions beat the Packers 24-14. But as we always do, we got you covered on all fronts. We're going to take you through everything from a busy Week 9 with our Sunday 6, the 6 biggest storylines coming out of the weekend, whether that's Green Bay, Detroit, a big win for the Atlanta Falcons earlier in the day, and a potentially big quarterback injury for the Dallas Cowboys, an impressive road win for Jayden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, a couple running backs you may have heard of making noise at the top of the league, and a zany day out in the NFC West. All of that to get to, and so much more. Let's start the Sunday 6 out with the big measuring stick game in the NFC North that turned into a big statement by the Detroit Lions. I don't know if I've ever seen a pregame storyline subverted as much as it was here as the Lions win 24-14 at Lambeau Field. Remember, it's the Lions that hadn't played a game outdoors all season. It's the Lions that play in the friendly confines of Ford Field at home. They were the team that needed to test themselves in the elements, and oh boy, was it a test. This is one of the most insane rain games I've seen in a while. I think it finally let up as Green Bay was scoring garbage time points in a game that was decided long before the fourth quarter. But it was pouring for 80% of the action on Sunday at Lambeau Field, and it didn't seem like it bothered the Detroit Lions at all. Jared Goff, 18 of 22 on the day. He's now completing 75% of his passes on the season, one of the silliest stats in the NFL this year. Lions, very efficient as an offense. Didn't need to do a whole lot. Honestly, it reminded me of their win against Tennessee last week. The Packers doubled them up in total yardage because the Lions just didn't need to do that much to put Green Bay away. Meanwhile, the Packers clearly struggled with the elements. 3 botched snaps in this game, 3 fumbles by Green Bay, albeit they recovered all of them. Still didn't look like a team that's used to playing outdoors in Wisconsin. 6 drop passes by Green Bay's receivers, could not get on the same page with Jordan Love, and really felt like a game-deciding play late in the first half. Jordan Love's trying to make something happen. He tries to dump an outlet pass to Josh Jacobs, and it is intercepted and returned for 6 by Kirby Joseph. And really, at halftime, Lions go in with a 17-3 lead. It did not feel like the Packers were going to come close the rest of the day. And the rest of the game really felt like keep away. Nice individual days, though. Jahmyr Gibbs had a fantastic 18-yard touchdown run right out of halftime to really put this thing away. Amon-Ra St. Brown leads the Lions with 7 for 56, and he does get a tutty. Hope you saw his headstand celebration, which we're seeing celebrations go viral faster than we ever have before. Just 24 hours after he sees a college football celebration, he's doing it for the Detroit Lions, and he was Tom Brady's LFG Player of the Game.
Every game that I broadcast, I award the LFG Player of the Game to that one player who makes me say, let's go.
Amon-Ra, congratulations. You win the LFG Player of the Game. What a performance. Tell me about this rivalry you had with the Packers and what you guys needed to do today to come on the road in this tough conditions. And I know you haven't played in these conditions. What was it like out there today for you?
Yeah, first off, I just want to say thank you, man. Awesome award. We knew coming into this it was going to be tough game. I mean, they're a good team, great defense, conditions that we typically don't play in. We play indoors, so we knew with the rain it might be a more run-heavy game, but I think we're built for that. We got guys on our team, our O-line, our running backs, receivers that can block tight ends, so we knew it was going to be this type of game. I'm just glad we came out on top.
Yeah, there's so many unselfish players on your team. I love watching you guys play. It reminds me of so many of the great teams that I played on, but there is a ridiculous stat that we just saw at the end of the game. The last 30 times Jared has targeted you, you've actually caught the ball. And it speaks so much to your dependability and consistency. Tell me about your guys' connection and the way that you guys continue to play such efficient football.
Yeah, I think, it starts with the work, the prep that we put in and week out. Ben Johnson putting up a great game plan for us, for me to get open. Jared's seeing everything great right now. He's playing at an all-time high. And I think just the 4 years that we've been together, we've just built on the chemistry. Each and every year, he's starting to understand. He knows how I like to run my routes. I know what he's seeing out there, and he's just taking care of the football. If he's not throwing it to me, he's throwing a check down. He's taking care of the football, and I think that's the biggest thing for us.
Yeah, that chemistry is unbelievable, and you guys executed at such a high level, throwing and catching. But another thing you executed today was that touchdown celebration. Tell me about the headstand. That's what I want to hear about.
I saw someone do it in college, actually, yesterday. I was on my phone scrolling through social media. I saw a guy do it. I was like, ooh, I gotta hit that. And sure enough, one of my fellow teammates that I played with at USC, Drake London, he did the same thing before me. I'm like, damn, he already did it. I said, I'm still going to do it, though, if I score.
You pulled it off, man. It looked great. Your team pulled it off today. What a win on the road. Congratulations to you. Have a safe flight home.
Appreciate it.
Way to go, man.
For as much hype and anticipation as there was on this game, I don't really come out of Lions-Packers feeling like I learned a whole lot. We knew the Lions were the class of the NFC, one of the best teams in the entire league. They certainly looked like that again on Sunday. They stay on top of the most competitive division in football. They've now beaten Green Bay and Minnesota, who are their closest challengers. Chicago Bears lose an ugly one in Arizona, so they fall even further off the pace. It does look like it's Detroit's division to lose right now, but the reason I say I don't think I learned anything is because I'm not going to press any kind of panic button on this Packers team. This looked like a team that desperately needs a week off, which is where the Packers are going now. They're going into their bye at 6-3. Given the injury issues that Jordan Love has dealt with, I think you got to keep perspective if you're a Packer fan. If I told you when Jordan Love hurt his knee in that loss to Philly way back on the opening Friday of the season, if I told you way back then that he would miss time and then deal with another injury heading into this game, and you'd be 6-3 at the bye, you would be ecstatic. That said, Jordan Love looks like a guy who needs a little bit of time off. That groin injury was clearly bothering him throughout this game, not completely letting him off the hook for what continue to be very boneheaded decisions. I mean, the pick six that basically ended this game to Kirby Joseph at the end of the first half, a completely avoidable mistake. And you see it all the time with super talented guys. Jordan Love has absolute faith in his physical ability to make every play and never give up. And that's admirable. And a lot of times it can lead to big plays, but when you're playing the best of the best, it can get you in a lot of trouble. And that's what happened here. 10 penalties for 67 yards from the Packers today, in addition to the botched snaps, in addition to the pick six. Not good football against anybody. Certainly not going to pay off playing a team like Detroit. So not to take credit away from the Lions win, because it certainly was impressive the way they dominated this game. And like I said, out of their elements, outdoors, in the pouring rain, they are just such a brutally efficient, clean football team. But if I'm a Packer fan, I'm saying, all right, we take this with a grain of salt. We take our medicine. We get a week off, and we've got another division game against what looks like a reeling Chicago team. I think the Packers will be fine in the big picture, is all I'm saying. But having said all of that, I mean, the standings speak for themselves. The Lions at an impressive 7-1, the first time since 1956. It's still not boring to me to see the Lions continue to set all these firsts that we haven't seen since before the Super Bowl was even a thing. It's very, very fun. I mean, Kansas City, I guess I'll give you Kansas City. And other than that, I just don't know if there's a better team in the NFL than the Detroit Lions, and they proved it once again. Second item on the Sunday Six is the first half of our Fox doubleheader for Week 9. The Atlanta Falcons down the Dallas Cowboys 27-21. Don't let final scores fool you, because it says the Falcons won by less than a touchdown. Sounds like a nervy game, right? Absolutely not. Atlanta in control for the vast majority. Another pretty hapless showing by the Dallas Cowboys. More important than that, though, this was a game where their starting quarterback went out injured. Dak Prescott left at the end of the third quarter and did not return with what they're billing as a hamstring injury. The Atlanta Falcons looking explosive on offense. Their pass rush came to life against the Cowboys. Kirk Cousins in the last 5 years has now had 21 games with 3 or more passing touchdowns. There's only 2 guys in the league in that time span that have done it more often than him. It's Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Love that we're putting to rest the idea that Kirk Cousins is a bad or overrated quarterback. The guy is off to a phenomenal start. Big win for the Atlanta Falcons to get to 6-3. Had a chance to catch up with Greg Olsen and Adam Amin, who were on the call to talk all things Falcons Cowboys.
Guys, I think I want to start here with this Falcons performance. I mean, I know we talked a lot about it heading into the season. Plenty of concerns about a guy Kirk Cousins' age recovering from the injury that he had. All of that stuff in mind, what does it say about him that he is playing as well as he is? Really playing some of the best football of his career, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't say enough good things. It's everything Atlanta hoped when they went out and paid big money for an injured veteran quarterback coming off, up until the injury, what was a career year in Minnesota with the Vikings last season. Of course, blows out the Achilles, and early in the year, there was a lot of questions. Was he ready? Should they go back to Michael Penix until he's healthy? And it just seems as every week has gone on, he's gotten better, the offense has gotten better, and ultimately, him and Zach Robinson, their relationship, their vision to seeing this whole thing through the same set of lenses. I mean, this team just, I'll tell you what, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's all there is to it at this point, Dave. It's an opportunity for us to see him the last couple of weeks and see how Kirk Cousins has evolved. We talked to you about this a week ago. Zach Robinson and Kirk Cousins not necessarily on the same page personnel-wise. They're running a lot more 12 early. They shifted into an 11 personnel mainly. They didn't run a lot of play action early. Kirk Cousins is a great play action quarterback. He's starting to implement more of that. So that marriage between quarterback, play caller, and staff and the weapons on the outside are all starting to really look good together through about 9 games or about the midway point.
I typically prefer to focus on the winner in these interviews, but it's such a huge development for the Cowboys that they lose Dak Prescott in this game in addition to the loss. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see where he stands from a health standpoint, but how do the Cowboys keep this thing from snowballing with that added factor thrown into the mix?
Yeah, they've been missing a lot, right? On the defensive end in particular. Now we saw the offensive injuries start to mount up today.
Yeah, just at some point, the next man up, it only lasts for so long. And I think that's really been the story of the entire season. Now, they have a lot more issues going on and things that have changed since last year's successful season other than injuries. But listen, when you have Deron Bland, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, you're not just losing your best players, you're losing premier players in all of the NFL. And now, all of a sudden, the injuries have started to creep in on the offensive side of the ball. They lose Dak for almost all of the fourth quarter. CeeDee Lamb, for all intents and purposes, they lost him for a good chunk of the fourth quarter, battling through that shoulder. So they've got to hope both those injuries are not long-term, because if they are, just as they get healthy and back on track on defense, it seems like now it just flips to the other side and you just play whack-a-mole all season.
Yeah, 3-5 is not a great place to be. Over the last 30-plus years of sample size, it's like a 10% shot of making the playoffs. It's just a hard hole to climb out of. Even with the expanded format, it's tough to dig out of a 2-loss hole, under 2, below 500 at this point of the season to try to make the playoffs.
And the schedule doesn't get a lot easier for Dallas either, so we'll see how they manage that. But hey, not the Falcons' problem, y'all. They are flying high, looking like clear-cut favorites in that NFC South. I appreciate it as always, fellas. Take care.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Thanks, Dave.
Like I told Adam and Greg, I do think this is a game where you need to spend a fair share of time on the losing team because of what this Dak Prescott injury could mean to the Dallas Cowboys season. I mean, it's already a forgettable one. They fall to 3-5. Division looking mighty tough all of a sudden. I don't know if they have the horsepower to catch Washington and Philadelphia. They definitely don't if this hamstring injury is going to force Dak Prescott out for any amount of time. I know he's struggled this year. I know it hasn't been his best showing, but Sunday was his second best passer rating of the season. He was up over 100 for just the second time this year. His last possession cut the Falcons' deficit to 8 points to end the third quarter. So it was there on the table for the Cowboys in the fourth quarter, maybe, if they have a healthy Dak Prescott. Trust me, I am well aware that the Falcons piled up plenty of yardage. I think Atlanta wins this game even with a healthy Dak, but I think it's a different finish. Whereas once he was ruled out of this game, you put this one out of your head. Maybe you're paying attention to some other closer finishes elsewhere. And if he misses significant amounts of time, we've talked about this on the show plenty, but Philly is up next, Houston, then Washington. This could get really out of hand really quickly. So situation that bears a lot of monitoring. Dak said after the game, it would take a lot to keep him out next week, but it's bad enough that they expect to have an MRI on his hamstring. Never want to associate the letters MRI with your starting quarterback. So hopefully Dak is right, because I think he's just about the only thing that's giving the Cowboys a chance to try to climb out of this hole. They'll get Micah Parsons and Deron Bland back in time, but is that enough to overcome what is shaping up to be one of their worst starts in modern memory? Every week I say the vibes are bad in Dallas, and every week it seems like they get worse. Hopefully a multi-week quarterback injury is not thrown into the equation. Now, not to ignore the Falcons completely, because you won't find many teams in the NFL, short of maybe the Chiefs, and we'll throw in the Buffalo Bills as well, that are in a better position than the Atlanta Falcons. 6-3 on top of the division. Their closest competitor for the division title, Tampa, has to play the Chiefs on the road tonight on Monday Night Football. They could have a 3-game lead. Remember, they've already swept the Buccaneers, so they've got that in their back pocket. And if they can beat a reeling Saints team next week on the road, they'll be 5-0 in the division with half the season still to play. Already won 4 NFC South games. They are in the driver's seat. And I looked it up before we recorded too. Already projected to be a road favorite in that game against the Saints. And if you watched the Saints lose to the Carolina Panthers on Sunday, you probably understand why. Like I said, I thought incredibly encouraging, I would say, to see, the Falcons had 2 sacks in this game. They put pressure on Dak Prescott. That was one hole that we could poke in their game. Looked like an improved showing from them, but then it's not. Let's get back to the lead, which Kirk Cousins, 144.8 passer rating. I know we've talked about him as having a nice season all year long, but it does still feel that it's flying under the radar. When you make a signing like this, when you put the franchise on a guy's shoulders, it comes with a lot of expectation. And, you think back to that loss to Pittsburgh in week 1, where it didn't look like he was fully recovered from his Achilles. They had a rough game against Seattle a couple of weeks ago where you say, man, if you can pressure Kirk Cousins, is this offense capable of getting where it needs to go? The full body of work is incredibly impressive. 3 games now this season with 3 or more touchdowns. Our joke last week was that maybe he can only do it against Tampa Bay. Well, he's done it against Dallas now. And I just don't know how many defenses can hold this offense down when Kirk Cousins is playing this well. Glad to see he had a moment in the sun afterwards. He caught up with our Pam Oliver.
All right, Kirk, you guys keep stacking them up. What's the greatest contributor to this game here today?
Well, I think Bijan played a great game, made plays for us from the start of the game till the end. It's a good mix of run and pass. When Drake London went down, Kadero Hodge and Mooney and Ray really stepped up in the pass game. Protection was strong all game long, and our defense stood up. So team win as they all are, and you got to keep stacking them.
What about that love for the defense? Much maligned in a lot of categories, but what do you appreciate about the fight?
Yeah, I only gave up 13 points until that final drive. We asked a lot of them in the second half. We didn't give them much in the fourth quarter, so would have loved to have pulled away, but pleased the way our defense held on.
You complete a lot of passes. What's the key to that kind of success and efficiency?
Yeah, I just am always looking to be a distributor and get the ball out of my hand and find the open guy and let them go make the play. And so whether it's Bijan out of the backfield or receivers down the field, trying to give them opportunities. It was good tight coverage today. Zim did a nice job mixing it up and keeping us guessing, and they did a good job in coverage matching us.
Appreciate it as always.
All right, thanks, man. We will see you next week.
Yes.
The third item on our Sunday 6 for Week 9 is our Victory Unlocked. It's brought to you by Zillow. Agents, tours, loans, homes. The Washington Commanders were not at home. They go on the road the week after that zany win over the Chicago Bears. And they take care of business. They beat the New York Giants 27-22. Not an eye-popping win, but a very impressive one anyway, for the sheer fact that the Commanders got the win and did it with control of this game. The Giants scored late, have an onside kick opportunity to make it interesting, but it never really felt like this thing was in doubt from halftime onward. And even if the stats don't jump off the page or the Commanders didn't put up this crazy score number, to go on the road and just be better than the Giants, it's a statement to me for where this team is in the process and where Jayden Daniels is as a rookie quarterback, to bounce back from being the talk of the NFL world all week, one of the craziest plays any of those guys will ever be part of, and just go play an efficient game of football on the road. I thought it was very impressive. That was the line of questioning I took with our guys, Mark Sanchez and Chris Myers, who were on the call in New York. Well, guys, no Brian Robinson Jr. for Washington, and apparently no problem. What was the key to their ground game staying rolling against New York?
Well, I think Austin Eckler really picked up the slack. I think he tweaked his knee or something and came out of the game, and you insert Chris Rodriguez, and everybody's looking around like, who is this guy? Well, they called him up from the practice squad, drafted him a couple years ago, only in his second year, out of Kentucky, and a 6th-round pick coming up big on the road in a divisional game like this. I mean, that just speaks to the belief that this team has in Dan Quinn, in this system, in Cliff Kingsbury, and the quarterback. And it's so tough to stop this rushing attack because Daniels is a part of that rushing attack. He gives them the numbers advantage in this run game, and that's what made them so successful.
Yeah, Dave, just the threat of Daniels running. He didn't have to a lot, but when he did, it was efficient, over 240 total yards. He had a couple of touchdown passes, but Mark makes the point that the Dan Quinn team, I know it's, talk about culture and atmosphere and selflessness, but this team, the underrated offensive line, right? They've scored more touchdowns on the ground than anybody in the league this year, and they have the right blend of rookies and veterans and new players, and no fluke. I mean, to be 7-2, this is a halfway point of the year. I mean, they're for real.
They look
Anybody
good.
doubt it?
They look good.
With a young quarterback and the emotions of last week winning the way they did on the Hail Mary, I wouldn't have blamed Washington if they'd had a bit of a letdown with all of that stuff in mind. What does it say about them that they were able to play such a clean, efficient game and on the road at that?
Dan Quinn addressed that issue.
Dan Quinn addressed that exact thing because that's the first thing we asked him. After an emotional win like that and an emotional high, it's normal to come out and lay an egg and think everything's going to work out fine. And this team Dan said they did a great job of acknowledging exactly what they felt, getting their emotions in order, and most importantly, in check. So you can turn the page and move on and get ready for a grinder of a week against a really tough Giants defense. And it didn't quite look like it today, potentially, from the Giants. But I'm telling you, they have players all over the field. They have guys that can, make your run game life difficult. So you could tell Washington was ready, and they put that game last week in its place, got better from it, moved on, and got another victory.
Yeah, top team in sacks, did not have one against Washington. The Giants did not. And refill, he talked about refill the tank was Dan's exact words about that. And that's another good sign that against a team like Chicago, you cannot play your best football and somehow win it, even though you get a break at the end being in place. And this was a key divisional game. And now I know they have the Steelers next. But the division, you're fighting off Philadelphia and Dallas. They're going to be tough to topple, especially
it's
when
a tough road to hoe down the stretch here. They got the Steelers and then a short week on a Thursday night. So we're going to learn a lot more about this team quickly in the next 14 days or so.
We absolutely are. But, man, in the meantime, what a fun team. Washington 7-2 for the first time since 1996. It's been such a cool story. Guys, love chatting with you. Thanks as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
Still wild to me that this is the Commanders' best start as a franchise since the 1996 season. I went back and looked it up because I remember the 2012 team with Robert Griffin III being such a fun story and such a lightning in a bottle moment. They caught fire over the second half of the season. They actually started that year 3-6, and they came out of their bye and won 6 games in a row. This is a different story, much more consistent. Don't have to dig out of any holes. 7-2, so much fun. And I'm not going to say the lazy thing because I don't need the Commanders to prove to me they're a good team. They went toe-to-toe with the Baltimore Ravens, who, when they're on, are as good as anybody in the NFL. And 7 wins is 7 wins. But I do still think the Commanders are looking for that crown jewel in their tiara, so to speak, when you talk about wins. The blowout win over Arizona looking better and better by the week as the Cardinals now improve to 5-4. But the rest of the wins on this Washington schedule, a lot of teams below or at 500. Again, it's not to say that the Commanders aren't for real, but it would mean something to me, I think, when you're talking about what is Washington's ceiling to see them get a win against somebody that we think will be playing late in the year. Well, going to have a couple opportunities here over the next couple weeks because it's Pittsburgh up next, like we talked about with Mark and Chris, and then a trip to play the Philadelphia Eagles, who all of a sudden are starting to look a lot like the team from 2022. So 2 big opportunities for Washington. It's going to be all eyes on Jayden Daniels. Not that that's anything new for him, as he caught up with our Christina Pink after this win.
All right, a tough division battle on the road. You know the Giants aren't going to go away quietly. How are you guys able to make the plays at critical times to steal this one?
Yeah, I think that's just a testament to the team. Our brotherhood, our will to want to win, and our hunger to want to win. It's put to the test. It's not easy to come on the road and play a divisional opponent. You played them twice already, so I'm very proud of this win.
Well, you talk about your pride in this win. You're doing it without Brian Robinson today, and the offense still seemingly continued to fight and roll. So what did you learn about this group?
Yeah, next man up mentality. And that's one thing that DQ and this staff does a great job is breathing confidence into the players. No matter if you're the starter or you're a P squad guy. Everybody's ready when the number is called and shot out today.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Fourth item on our Sunday 6 should just be called Running Backs Matter, because 2 high-profile ones continue to dominate the league this season. Let's start with the Baltimore Ravens and Derrick Henry, who, joke's on me, I thought the Broncos might cover an 8-point spread in Baltimore on Sunday. Not even close. The Ravens smoke them. 1 week after an embarrassing loss to Cleveland, they rebound looking like the juggernaut they've been for a lot of the year. We're going to highlight Derrick Henry, and you'll see why when I start listing off some of these stats, but really just a complete team domination. Lamar Jackson had another perfect passer rating, 3 more touchdowns, had as many touchdowns as incompletions, which I think feels like at least the second, if not the third game we can say that about. On an absolute tear. easily at the top of the list along with Jared Goff to be the NFL MVP. But 106 more rushing yards and 2 touchdowns for Derrick Henry. And what this guy is doing, it just illustrates how dominant he is. I mean, starting right there, 2 rushing touchdowns on Sunday against the Broncos, 26th career game with 2 rushing touchdowns, 4th most in NFL history. He only trails LaDainian Tomlinson, Emmitt Smith, Adrian Peterson, Jim Brown. You picking down what I'm putting up, like some real elite company here. Along with that, 100 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Only LaDainian Tomlinson and Jim Brown have done that more times in the history of the NFL. He's the 10th player to score 100 rushing touchdowns. His first one against Denver gave him 100. Second one put him at 101. I knew he had scored a lot. I did not realize he passed Marshall Faulk and Sean Alexander with those 2 touchdowns. John Riggins, Jim Brown, and Walter Payton are in sight in terms of career touchdowns. He's already at 11 halfway through the season. So if he keeps that pace up, it's entirely possible Derrick Henry could be top 5 in rushing touchdowns for his career by the end of this season. I joked about it before we started recording. Before the season started, I guess I thought Derrick Henry was a Hall of Famer. Maybe I just hadn't thought that hard about it. But I would have said before the season, yeah, I can see it, but maybe he needs a few more years. Even just 9 games into this season, it feels like a slam dunk when you start reading off these sorts of numbers. And maybe it already was. Don't come for me. But it just highlights how ridiculous this guy has been. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Ravens look this explosive with him doing his thing. Zay Flowers was the big beneficiary of all of this on Sunday, had his best day as a Raven with 2 touchdowns of his own. The explosive element of the passing game is just so much easier for Lamar Jackson. And I don't think there are very many teams that can limit Derrick Henry when Baltimore's clicking. Remember, think all the way back to the first Thursday of the season, felt like he was an afterthought in that loss to Kansas City, 13 carries for 46 yards. Since then, he's averaging 126 rushing yards per game. Obviously, has had some really crazy days. He went for almost 200 against Buffalo, had 150 against Dallas, but over the course of 8 weeks, averaging 126 rushing yards is truly incredible. I'm not going to bet against him setting some really silly records by the time the season's over. 2,000-yard season is absolutely in sight. I think he's technically on pace for a little less than that right now, but all it takes is him breaking another one of those 80-plus yarders and all bets are off. And I'm guessing the Ravens are going to have plenty of opportunities to do that with games against the leaky Bengals run defense coming up here in just 4 days. They play on Thursday Night Football. 2 years, $16 million for Derrick Henry. And even at 30-plus years old, it feels like the bargain of all bargains. Dude is on a torrid pace. And he is not alone, because one of the other big running back signings of the offseason is right there with him. Saquon Barkley, have yourself a day in the Eagles' weird win over Jacksonville. They get the win 28-23. Saquon goes 27 carries for 159 and a touchdown, throws in 3 catches for 40 yards. He opened the scoring with a 20-yard touchdown catch. All of a sudden, much more quietly, I think, Saquon is right behind Derrick Henry with 925 rushing yards on the season and 8 touchdowns. He has gotten over 100 all-purpose in 7 of Philly's 8 games this year, and he's rushed for 100 in 5 of their 8 games. It really feels like he is the engine of that offense. Obviously, getting A.J. Brown back from injury helps as well. Something to watch. A.J. left this win against Jacksonville with a knee injury. But when Saquon Barkley's tearing off runs like this, I think, much like Derrick Henry in Baltimore, it opens everything up for Jalen Hurts, who looks like, I'm not going to say a completely different player. He looks like the old Jalen from a couple years ago who was all pro. Everything just moves so much more efficiently. 3 years, $38 million for Saquon. Yeah, I think the Eagles feel justified in giving that deal out right now. Of course, arguably the play of the weekend, the spin move, reverse, backward hurdle, whatever the hell that was that Saquon put on the Jags halfway through this game. I didn't even know that was physically possible. Dude is an absolute freak. And I am so relieved for him that he's not about to be the subject of every Monday talk show, every NFL segment of the week, because there was a strange sequence in this game. Eagles had a chance to put this thing away on their own terms late in the fourth, leading 28-23. They have 2nd and 13. Saquon breaks one outside for 9, and he hurdles a guy because it felt like he did that every 5 snaps in this game. Slides down after a 9-yard gain to stay in bounds. And I thought it was a really smart play at the time because you don't want to try to stretch it out too far and go out of bounds inside of 2 minutes or near 2 minutes, except the Eagles don't wind up picking up the first down. And it would have been very easy had Jacksonville come back to win to go back to that play and say, if Saquon fights for the extra yardage, he just might get the first down and the Eagles could kneel the ball out. Instead, it took Nakobe Dean getting an end zone interception of Trevor Lawrence. So, strange sequence, but I'm glad it's not going to overshadow another 150-yard day from Saquon Barkley. Spent so much time wringing our hands about whether running backs were worth paying. Well, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, they're here to tell you, yeah, we're worth it. The fifth item on our Sunday 6 just might have been the game of the day in what might be the wackiest division in the NFL. I guess the NFC North remains the best division in football, but who's having more fun every week than the NFC West, where first place and fourth place are separated by just one game? And no outcome better personifies that than the LA Rams going up to Seattle, getting out of there with a 26-20 win in overtime. What an incredible afternoon. And I'll be honest, I started off disappointed with this game. We previewed it heading into the weekend. It had a lot of potential for fun. A little bit of a snooze fest up until the second half. No points in the first quarter. Couple of touchdown drives, but the most noteworthy thing about this game at halftime was that Puka Nacua got ejected for getting into it with Reek Woolen after an interception. Just not a lot of entertainment value in the first hour and a half. And then all hell broke loose. I can't even detail all of it on my own, so I'll enlist the help of the guys that were on the call, Kenny Albert and Jonathan Vilma, who got to watch Matthew Stafford walk off the Seahawks with just an incredible sequence in overtime to get the Rams to 500. Well, guys, so much crazy stuff happened in this one. I'm not even 100% sure where you start, but I guess it's got to be that finish. I mean, not Matthew Stafford's most amazing day, and then 3 straight darts to win this thing in overtime. What a performance from him there in the extra period.
Well, it certainly was a wild game. We had a 103-yard interception return for a touchdown, some block kicks. Geno Smith throws 3 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, and like you said, Matthew Stafford on that last drive, he was perfect, 3 for 3, and without Puka Nacua for the entire second half and overtime, other receivers stepped up.
Yeah, you know, that last drive of Matthew Stafford really summed up the whole game for the Rams offense because they were methodical all game long. They were patient all game long. They knew they were going to have a Seattle Seahawks defense that had been talked about all week long. They can't stop anybody. They can't stop the run. They don't tackle. And then all of a sudden, you have the Rams that decided they're going to go after it, and then they got aggressive at the end to get that touchdown.
Very fitting for Miami Hurricane Cameron Kenchins to have a breakout game in front of Miami legend Jonathan Vilma. But really, this whole Rams defense really stepped up. I mean, the return, the stop on 4th down there in overtime, big day from a young unit there.
You know, they're really starting to find their stride. And I asked both coaches about their identity. And when we asked Sean McVay, remember, he said his identity on defense was being versatile and being aggressive. And right now, that's what they're doing. They have not just 4 defensive linemen. They have about 6 defensive linemen that really get after the quarterback. You have DBs that you can plug and play. Quentin Lake can play nickel. He can play safety. He gets in there. They're all aggressive, and they all are ball hawks. So when you look at that defense, they're young now. As they continue to get better through the season, you're going to watch a really good defense late in the season.
Really fun game. The Rams get the win to improve to 500. Kenny, JV, appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Big game for the U here in the booth as well.
Absolutely. Matthew Stafford, obviously the overtime hero, and I'm going to be watching the game-winning highlight throw to Demarcus Robinson. And anytime I need to pick me up, anytime I'm feeling slightly down in the dumps, I'm going to turn that play on. Incredible. I do want to say one more time, don't lose sight of what we're seeing from this young Rams defense. We talked about it in the preview episode. Jared Verse finally getting home on all of that pressure he's been creating. He looks like a star. Once again, a nice day from him. The Rams got 3 interceptions, one of those being a pick 6, like we talked about with JV and Kenny. 7 sacks on the afternoon, and then the huge 4th down stop in overtime to put Matthew Stafford in position to win. That's a big, big deal for a Rams team that's playing as many young players as it is on the defensive side of the ball. Honestly, pretty incredible Seattle even got this thing to overtime when you consider all of that. 3 picks from Geno Smith on the day, 2 of them in the red zone, and then one of them, Cameron Kenshin's returns for that touchdown. Seahawks also botched 2 snaps that lost them 44 yards of offense. They got penalized 12 times for 95 yards. Sloppy day. Really sloppy day for Seattle. It's impressive they managed to pull it together there at the end to lead that game-tying touchdown drive, which, shout out Jackson Smith and Jigba. 7 catches for 180 and 2 touchdowns, including the one that sent this thing into overtime. And I saw people pointing this out on Twitter. It's worth saying again. Jackson Smith and Jigba had 2 catches for 78 yards called back by Seattle penalties. I know that doesn't count. It doesn't stand, but the slimmest of margins away from a 200-plus yard receiving day. If those 2 catches had stood, it would have been the best single receiving day by a receiver so far this season. Incredible stuff. Geno, 363 yards. The Seahawks are a Madden team, a bad users Madden team. Like, they are capable of going off at any given time. They also make all kinds of mistakes and ill-timed decisions that sink them more often than not as they now fall below 500. Absolutely phenomenal. Had a blast watching it, which did not look like it was heading that way. Happy to see that I was wrong about that. But here's where we need to point out, all that craziness didn't even vault the Rams to the top of the division. That spot is reserved for the Arizona Cardinals. First place in the NFC West after 9 games, just like everybody predicted. They beat the Chicago Bears 29-9. They are above 500 for the first time since 2021, riding a 3-game winning streak for the first time since 2021. And this game almost felt over from the first few possessions. I know it took Arizona a little while to pull away, but just looked dominant. They ran the ball well. They got after Caleb Williams, that anemic Arizona pass rush. The Bears were the cure for their problems. They pressured Caleb Williams 23 times and sacked him 6 times. If you've watched Arizona play football this year, you know that says something troubling about Chicago's offense, the injuries that they're dealing with on their offensive line. Ugly day. And like I said, it looked one-sided in the first half, and right at the end of the first half, you see the straw that broke the camel's back. I've never seen a Hail Mary run before, but that's what seemed to happen out in Phoenix on Sunday afternoon. Amari DeMercado rushed 53 yards, virtually untouched, in the final 10 seconds of the first half. Got this from Elias Sports Bureau. According to them, it is the longest touchdown run in the final 20 seconds of a first half since at least the AFL-NFL merger back in 1970. Matt Eberflus prides himself on defense. That's his thing. Botched Hail Mary at the end of the Washington game last week, and this, which is just not supposed to happen at the highest levels of football. It felt to me like all the fight went out of Chicago after that. It put Arizona up 21-9 going into halftime. Bears did not score after halftime. It is going to be a rough week in Chicago as they try to cope with their offense regressing back to some of its uglier forms from earlier in the season, not to mention the defense having one of its worst days of the season. None of that is Arizona's problem, obviously. I want to shout this out. Arizona 5-4 despite running through a gauntlet. I mean, you think about where they've been this year. They've already played Buffalo, Detroit, Washington, San Francisco, Green Bay. Throw in the LA Chargers, who are doing just fine at 5-3 on the year. They have played a lot of really good teams and gotten to a winning record anyway. Schedule looks like it eases up a little bit out in Arizona. They've got just one opponent on their remaining schedule that is currently above 500. That would be the Minnesota Vikings. But you get games against the Patriots, the Panthers. You get a return game against the LA Rams, who they've already beaten. Just saying. I don't think this is a mirage. I don't know how high Arizona's ceiling is, but they've gotten to 5-4 despite a really tough schedule. The opportunity for a winning record and a surprise trip to the playoffs is absolutely there. We'll see if the Cardinals can seize on it. But in the meantime, it's been a fun division to follow out west. If Seahawks-Rams wasn't the game of the day, then the sixth item on our Sunday six definitely was. The Buffalo Bills beat the Dolphins in a thriller 30-27. Tyler Bass with the booming 61-yard field goal with 5 seconds to play. Doesn't it always happen this way? Tyler Bass, shaky. Missed an extra point early in this game. Clanged another one off the uprights. It was good, but, anytime you're bank shotting extra points, you're probably giving everybody in the stadium anxiety. He is called on from 61 yards to win this game, and wouldn't you know, he delivers. Just a fun all-around game, and you could feel the desperation in Miami. Obviously, they were 2-5 coming into this. They just got Tua Tagovailoa back. They lost a heartbreaker last week. I said it in the preview episode. This felt like a game Miami had to win if they're going to have any sort of slim hope at winning this division, at getting back above 500. They gave it everything they had, man. Tua, 25 of 28 for 231. Devon Achane looked like the guy that everybody was so excited about in fantasy season. Tyreek Hill doing his thing. Most hilarious stat line you'll see all season. Jalen Waddle, 2 catches for -4 yards, but a touchdown, because lost 20-something yards on Miami's end of game Hail Mary, pitchy woo-woo, to quote Scott Van Pelt. Miami, they left it all out there, and ironically, didn't feel like the Bills' best overall day. Just talked about Tyler Bass's issues. Josh Allen had a touchdown run negated by a holding penalty before halftime. Keon Coleman with the ultimate, oh no, bad luck interception, where Josh hits him on the slant over the middle, right by the goal line. He bobbles it. Jalen Ramsey picks it off. Miami answers that with a 97-yard touchdown drive. All of that type of stuff was going wrong for the Bills, but they have Josh Allen, and that's a hell of a nice thing to have. Absolutely one of the plays of the day was his touchdown pitch, whatever you want to call it, to Quentin Morris, where it looked like he was being dragged into the earth, and still just, when you're 6'5", 230-something pounds, you can do stuff like that. That's why Josh Allen is in the thick of the MVP race. I don't know how many people are hip to that just yet. And I know Jared Goff and Lamar Jackson are incredible, but what Josh Allen is doing with a lessened cast of players is awfully impressive. Bills didn't have Amari Cooper in this game. Did not matter. Ray Davis led Buffalo in receiving yards after a long 63-yard touchdown run, catch and run. Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid got involved. It's manageable to piece all this stuff together when you have Josh Allen. I don't think the list of other quarterbacks who could do this is very long. And now, look at the AFC East. I've talked about it before, but I'm so fascinated. The Bills get this dub. They're 5 games ahead of Miami, having swept the season series. The Jets beating Houston keeps them mathematically alive. But it is feasible to think Buffalo could have this thing locked up by like the first week in December. I looked into this. Had the Jets lost to Houston, Buffalo probably could have clinched the division as early as week 11 with a couple more Jets losses and a couple more wins. I do think it'll take until week 13 now, but that's a solid month before the regular season ends. Like, we could be talking about a Bills team that is waiting and resting and hoping for the right matchup in the playoffs. That's how quickly they could have this thing locked up. Now, it is fair to point out Kansas City, San Francisco, Detroit, all waiting on the Bills' upcoming schedule. It's going to get tough here. I think, they've won 4 in a row. I would guess another setback is coming eventually. But they have just run away from this division in a way that even the biggest Bills believer did not see coming. I'm curious because I do think even with a setback or two, I really think the Bills will have the AFC locked up before Christmas, and how they manage that is going to be very interesting for playoff seeding, for the rust versus rest factor, for Josh Allen's MVP hopes. Yeah. Fair to say I'm getting awfully ahead of myself, but that's how impressive this season has been for the Bills. They get it done in as fun a manner as we've seen them do all season long. They sweep the Dolphins. All right, that does it for our Sunday 6. That does it for the show, but never you fear. We have so much left to discuss in Week 9. Big Monday nighter, Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Tampa Bay Bucks on Monday night. We'll be back Tuesday to recap all of that. Also going to talk to Jay Glazer about all the latest news and rumors around the NFL. Maybe you've heard there's a trade deadline coming up. Discuss all of the latest with that. I'm expecting at least one more flurry of activity before the league's trade deadline on Tuesday afternoon. We're also going to take a look back at the first half of the season, wade into some of our preseason predictions, hand out some mid-season awards to the guys that have earned it. A little first half in review coming on Tuesday, along with trade deadline news, all the latest. So much more coming your way. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not. Go find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods, you can find us there. Go follow us on social media at NFL on Fox Pod. We appreciate the support so much. I will talk to y'all tomorrow.